Why are today's youth so nasty? Kids that age have always been jackals. I wouldn't go back to junior high for all the money in the world. You were lucky if you didn't endure this. I did. The kids did horrible stuff. You were lucky as a kid. Kids have always been like that. When I was a kid, there was this girl who would try to convince people to kill themselves. She would do it on the bus so there would be no adults around to hear it. Two things that have always been happening. The kind of behaviors you're rightfully criticizing. People making generalizations saying other gens are worse for one reason or another. IDK of any proof that today's kids are nastier. For better or worse. They're just people and history repeats itself. Children are usually mean. Their concept of how their actions can affect others isn't really settled in yet. And as a kid it's cool to be mean to others. You can do what you can, but children usually can be quite mean. Sounds like you were just lucky. And maybe perhaps sheltered as a youth. Every generation repeats the same talking about the next previous generation. About how theirs was the greatest and the newest one is horrible. As for this conversation you overheard, this is nothing in comparison to the day-to-day life of the majority of kids who went to school in my generation, which the boomers called Gen X, or the slacker generation. I can only speak for about 10-15 years ago, but when I was growing up kids were absolutely saying things like, "Nobody likes you," to other kids' faces and getting mean and violent with their friends. You're not paying very much attention if you haven't noticed that bullying narratives have existed in stories for ages. Kids are just mean. They always have been and always will be. I'm 43. As far back in school as I can remember. Even in elementary I remember kids getting bullied pretty bad. This new generation isn't any worse. You are just getting old tears of joy. Yeah, I think you may have just been lucky. I remember how girls treated each other from ages 10-12 or so. Just absolute psychopathic behavior for no obvious reason. I was a quieter, kind of nerdy girl, so I was an easy mark. Hope most of them grew out of it. Question mark. This is how I got bullied as a kid, just as bad. This isn't anything new. I was in middle school in the late 80s, early 90s. If you think kids then weren't complete assholes, then you might have been one of them. Lol. But if the kids today are worse, who do you think raised them? The cruelty of children is well known. Middle school is just a nasty age. In my experience, kids these days are more empathetic and open to differences in others than I was 20 years ago. Adults are particularly nasty these days. The nastiest kids I ever went to school with were at a private junior high. We moved, so I finished junior high at a low-middle-income public school. And the kids were so much nicer. This was in the 90s. Your sample size is pretty limited to this one demographic. I wouldn't judge an entire generation on that. There's a quote from Mike Tyson. Allegedly, social media made y'all way too comfortable with disrespecting people and not getting punched in the face for it. It's the what's on your mind mentality and the lack of hard consequences from speaking your mind recklessly that trained these kids to be so brazen. My dude. Someone planted and detonated a pipe bomb at my middle school. There were several stabbings and a high-profile shooting over drug deals. There were 3 fatal drunk driving accidents that killed a total of about 14 students in 1 year. Again, in middle school. This was all during my 8th grade year. Most of the above kids were 11-13. Be thankful that you had a sheltered, and probably middle class or better, childhood. You were lucky. I had similar experiences on a daily basis at that age. Actually, I heard youths are more tame now than in the past. I don't know, maybe you didn't want to see it or had a friend group who stayed away from it. I tell my kids to the teacher, come to us. I used to call them out and get into fights. Apparently I was a troublemaker though. Not the bullies. It did stop.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epicaricast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.